So the last kind of casual video essay that I did actually did much better than I expected it to, and I've been meaning to record one ever since. But the Substack essay that I did straight afterwards, which was called The Private Internet Won't Save You, it was good and I was proud of it, but it wasn't quite long enough for a video. It was only really like 6 minutes when I recorded it. So I decided to can that. But today I'm going to be talking about my next one, and the first one that I've published in February, because I do 3 each month in my Substack, but not all of them make it to YouTube. In 2000, a study on the brains of licensed London taxi drivers showed that their posterior hippocampi were significantly larger than those of non-drivers, and that this difference scaled with years of driving experience. The manner in which the study was spoken about at the time implied a level of surprise rooted in a pretty expected level of class bigotry. So when these same drivers started to warn us about the dangers, the manner in which the study was spoken about at the time implied a level of surprise rooted in a fairly expected level of class bigotry. How on earth could a simple taxi driver be smarter than me, a member of the intellectual elite? It served only as dinner topic conversation, and it didn't motivate anyone to think that this superior sense of navigation might encourage us to listen to the people who possess it, like my granda. So when these same drivers started to warn us about the dangers of the tech world's latest new toy, Google Maps, these fantastical reactions faded into whispers, with warnings labelled as technophobic nostalgia. But what if there were some truth to these concerns? Maybe the ability to navigate one's surroundings creates particular pathways in the brain that give you the ability to navigate the world, relationships, and learning. Could it be that merely being presented with information doesn't give us the same satisfaction as finding it ourselves? And does this explain the digital malaise that we all feel so acutely? Maybe this all started with Google Maps, and maybe we should have listened to taxi drivers. We often speak about navigation as if it were a single ability that humans possess. In reality, the ability to navigate the world that we live in is a distributed system that includes the ability to perceive things, remember things, move, and attach meaning to things. It's more about situated orientation than it is about finding directions. We can see navigation as a socially situated process embedded in local embodied knowledge, or at least it used to be. Navigation is broadly about getting from A to B, but this can describe the development of an argument, the finding of information, as well as the development of identity, place, and being. The sense of navigation is what allows us to build cognitive maps, internal models of the spatial relationships between places, which is supported by the hippocampus in the human brain. The construction of these cognitive maps is very experience dependent. Navigation, as a sense, relies on constraint recognition, boundaries, thresholds, borders, etc. And navigation systems support our ability to simulate our future, projecting routes, obstacles, and efforts in many areas of life. But we don't really use this ability anymore because we all navigate by following instructions on our phones, which tells us little about the world around us. And Google Maps was introduced in 2005 following Google's acquisition of an Australian startup called Where2 Technologies. Newspapers and tech blogs praised its turn-by-turn directions as a must-have for drivers and celebrated the idea that we no longer needed to ask for directions or remember routes. Since then, the more nefarious impacts of this technology have become clearer. Research across the last 2 decades consistently shows that reliance on GPS weakens spatial memory and cognitive map function. Frequent GPS users engage the hippocampus less often than those navigating using memory or environmental cues, which suggests a long-term atrophy risk in spatial reasoning. The ability to navigate is not a boohoo convenience culture bootstraps kids these days lament. It's more about the genuine sense of fulfillment and our ability to navigate, imagine, and create our present and our future. It's less about analog nostalgia, and it's more about asking, 1, how much do humans need the experience of navigation for emotional fulfillment and understanding the world around us? 2, to what extent does modern digital technology remove that ability from us? And 3, how did the dismissal of local, embodied, often working class knowledge stop us from seeing this disruption sooner? The algorithm furthers this logic about navigation because on social media, social information, pop culture, new interests, workouts, and any other manner of information appears to us as if it appeared out of thin air. We don't see the context, and our internal models of how we've gained this information are almost non-existent, which leads to all aspects of our lives: fashion, politics, music. And it's a large part of the memory disruption that exists in the digital age. Villainizing something as seemingly inane as Google Maps might seem like overreaching, but the logic it introduced is precisely what normalized this kind of relationship between us and the world around us. This relationship is disjointed, unmoored, and seems to cause a sense of constant anxiety and a crisis of future imagining. This, I believe, is a central component of the widespread digital fatigue that we all feel. This sense of digital disorientation is exhausting because humans are built to find their own way, and when we don't have reason to do this, we get sad, basically. The other fascinating or terrible aspect of navigation in the social media age is that it's become reciprocal. We might not be navigating the world around us in the same way that allows the development of internal models of the world around us, but the devices that precipitated this crisis of navigation are navigating us. We aren't navigating or mapping in the same way, but we are being mapped and navigated. To the extent that navigation still exists in the algorithmic age, it's now a two-way street, causing further disruption to our sense of place in the world. Last year, a study from MIT on the impact of large language models gained a lot of attention. A lot of interpretations claimed the study proved that use of LLMs caused loss of cognitive function. Participants performing professional writing and analytical tasks with GPT-4 level assistance completed tasks 40% faster, and their output quality was rated higher, but cognitive workload and active engagement decreased. This mirrors classic cognitive offloading patterns seen in earlier studies of GPS-dependent navigation. We already know that this is how cognitive offloading works. It's great to confirm that large language models operate in the same way, but the real question is how people are actually using LLMs. From what we already know about navigation in the digital age, there are concerns. AI could, dependent on long-term usage, further disrupt our sense of navigation and cause deterioration of our ability to construct internal models. It could remove the last barrier between information and us finding that information, increasing the sense of disorientation that's the foundation of digital fatigue. But it might not. All of this is speculative. We know that there's an existing lineage of technologies that disrupt navigation process, and that the reintegration of these navigation processes into daily life is key to combating digital fatigue. But it is not taken as a given that AI will develop this same way, and it would be foolish to assume so at such an early stage. As I've already touched on, I'm not advocating for a digital detox or an analog return to old-fashioned ways. This is unhelpful, backwards looking, and nostalgic in all the worst ways. We need to recognise that everyday life no longer generates a sense of orientation automatically, and ask how we might integrate that orientation into our daily lives. When designing technology, particularly the kind that allows us to develop ideas and apply knowledge, we have to ask some key questions. Firstly, can someone locate what they saw? Can they locate disagreement? Can they see where an answer came from? Is a user still building an internal model of space, knowledge, and social reality? Rebuilding our internal models of space, knowledge, and social reality is a difficult task, but it's not an impossible one. It won't be achieved by lamenting on podcasts about the issue, and it has to involve asking the serious, difficult question. Personally, I've developed a bad fear of getting lost, and I tend to overuse Google Maps when I have no need to. Since writing this, I've stopped trying to do that, and I haven't gotten lost once, and I've had some fascinating conversations by actually asking people for directions, which shockingly didn't get me lost either. When it comes to social reality, it can help to explain social phenomena to people who aren't on it. I once described social media to my mother as like having a little directory in your phone of everyone you've ever met at a party and went, "Oh, they seem cool," on the same place that you store your photo albums and get your news. For my mum, who's Gen X, this seemed to make the impact of social media on young people's lives far clearer to her, as she was able to imagine what it would have been like when she was in her 20s. This explanation does tend to make any Gen Xer who's not online go white as a ghost, imagining the predicaments that they would have got themselves in with this ability to contact everyone you've ever met at a party. It's not a skill that young people naturally have, but it forces us to situate social media experiences in the world rather than thinking of them as some magical experience. This isn't a holistic solution, but I found it to bring me some level of personal relief, and I would really strongly recommend it. Same way. So for a bit of context, my late granda was a taxi driver, and like most taxi drivers, he was adamantly against sat-navs. When my mum first got one, I remember the lecture that he gave her on it, despite the fact I was really young at the time. I was reminded of this recently, and it was what triggered me to rethink my perspective on the sense of navigation and its importance in our lives. Maybe my granda was right, which really should not surprise me at this point. And maybe these sat-navs were the beginning of the end. We end up with these technological hellscapes often because we privilege those who are already privileged, as opposed to the people who actually know what they're talking about.